happening. So, 4 hours of my life gone forever. Watch the Oscars. I did it for you. Granted, I did fall asleep for 1 hour. Oh, did I drool. But still, that's 3 hours of my life down the toilet. Now, we could just focus on the political statements made, but we get that stuff. Instead, why do people like me who really, really love movies really hate the Oscars? I grew up with the 1970s Saturday matinees where you arrived in the morning and you left when it's dark. Planet of the Apes, The Neptune Factor, Willard, or disaster epics like Earthquake, Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno. Movies were the escape for a kid in suburbia when there wasn't much else but cement playgrounds littered with pull tab beer cans. Remember those? Those were great. Cut myself a lot. But times have changed. Now we're being informed, not entertained. The Oscars now ignore the escape, bowing to pressures of groupthink as virtue signaling Trump's shared human experience. Movies were once about entertaining us, yet the Oscars recast art as a conduit for the new religion of identity.
None other than President Trump called Get Out the best first 3 quarters of a movie this year. We don't make films like Call Me By Your Name for money. We make them to upset Mike Pence.
A president that chose with hate, he don't control our fate because God is great.
And like everyone in this room and everyone watching at home, we are dreamers.
To all the dreamers out there, we stand with you.
Well, thank you. Why were the Oscars on TV to begin with? To see the stars. Now it's an off-site retreat for a troubled industry, something you might accidentally walk into at a hotel reception hall. And so the stars don't realize how bad they look when they try to talk to America by crashing a nearby theater.
We brought you some goodies.
You are live on the Oscars right now. In fact, you see that audience? There's Meryl Streep. Who would like a hot dog? Does anyone want a hot dog? All right, let's fight. Do not aim the hot dogs at the vegetarians. Oh, there you go. Ansel, go ahead, fire that thing into the crowd. This is a lot of fun.
In the Oscars, we can eat and dance and scream.
Please welcome Tiffany Haddish and Maya Rudolph.
Oh, your beard smells delicious.
Oh, we brought you some goodies, you peasants. They're so much better than you are. So as the Oscars try to explain why movies matter, you end up hating everything about movies. And that's not fair to the movies. In short, if you hate the Oscars, it's because you love movies. That's something Hollywood might address, but they won't. All right, Brian.
Yes.
I know you're a huge fan. You go to movies all the time instead of actually working.
And if they're closed, I go to Blockbuster. And I love the way Blockbuster used to say, "Here's your tape. Now there's the door."
Yes.
And they used to put it right at the end. It really bothered me.
Did you find what's your take on the Oscars? It seemed kind of tame this year, maybe.
The part that you didn't like, I liked. I liked when he walked across the street into the theater.
You like that?
I thought that was kind of cool because he's trying to bring the curtain down and relax these people who are extremely uptight around security guards and don't know what it's like to be normal.
I have to say that it was completely choreographed, and it was, hey, look how great we are, magnanimous? Is that a good word? Magnanimous.
Almost.
But you would
almost.
Yeah.
That we were going over there and saying hello.
Magnanimously, they're going in
yes.
there. Yeah. Or
I had 3 magnums before I came here.
I can tell.
Kimberly, thoughts?
Yes, I'll do a better job. So here's what happened. They have this big, spectacular thing, and yes, they want to make it relatable and approachable, but that's like a very signature Jimmy Kimmel move from his show where he goes into a place. So that was a little bit familiar to me with his personality,
yes.
Why he feels comfortable with it. So they were trying to make it more about the people, and I think it's about the recent movements, the Me Too movements, that we're going to connect with everybody, the commonality, the thread that puts us together. I don't know. It seemed a little bit kind of gimmicky for me, but, that's okay. I'm used to it from Kimmel, so I thought that was fine. But other than that...
Who took it from Letterman?
Yeah, who originally, so he stole it from Letterman. So
who stole it from Steve Allen?
Is it really true from Steve Allen? I didn't go that far back. Anything else with 23andMe? Or
well, I like Late Night Show. I know I can't go back in time, but I remember David Letterman used to go across the street to the Museum of Broadcasting and look up old Steve Allen things and Jack Paar things to make some stuff cool.
Well, that was before my time, but thank you so much. It's so good to have a historian on the show.
Thank you very much.
Juan, I have a theory, and I want you to agree with it.
Is it down there, or are you making it up?
I have it right here. I think I don't think the Oscars were as political as they could have been because of the sex harassment scandals that tempered the anti-Trump fervor. Like they could have gone after Trump a lot more, but they had this. They can't because it's the pot calling the kettle black. And don't mean to be racist.
It's not.
Okay, just checking. Just checking.
You have an anxiety over that issue. No, but I gotta say, I agree with Brian. I thought it was kind of fun, and it's a little bit like, you know, I think it was Letterman used to go next door to the deli.
All the time.
Right.
He
so-
made the whole neighborhood
And
celebrities.
I just think if you're watching a movie and all of a sudden there's a movie star, that's pretty cool.
What's your overall, but the sense of the I can tell nobody watched this.
I did.
I watched about it.
No, you're right about
I
that.
watched
I
it.
didn't watch it. I didn't.
But here's can I just chime in for a second? The main event was after 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you have the best picture at 11:20. I'm not allowed to stay up that late. It's a
That
school
was
night.
late. That's right.
Yeah,
you really aren't allowed
Yeah.
to stay up that late
There-
doing
All
your
right.
job.
Yeah, forget
but I
it.
must say, they got it right. I thought the movies, if we can talk about that for a second.
No, we're not.
Oh, okay.
No, go for it. I'm kidding. Go.
Well, I thought Shape of Water. I saw all
You
the
like
movies.
that perverted movie?
I loved it. And you know what was interesting?
A woman
I saw
has
3 billboards.
relations with a sea monster.
You have no fantasy? You've never had a thought of fantasy?
gosh.
You know, I mean,
You
the
got me,
director-
Juan. Yes, I do.
Okay, so but
I have sea monster posters all over
Is
my
that
room.
right? I think they're now making, personal devices that look like the sea monster. But I think the idea that you had not only a great movie and that I think is going to stand the test of time. Often the Oscars don't pick the best movie.
Yes, it's
but
true.
The second movie also 3 billboards. Again, that should have been honored, and Gary Oldman should have been honored for Darkest Hour.
I didn't like that
But
one.
I loved
I
it.
It was
loved
not
that.
good. I want to see the war. Can I see the war? I don't want to see one guy for 3 hours walk
But
around
Brian-
overweight drinking with a big cigar.
No, but Brian,
We've had enough of that.
He stood up to the people who didn't want to go fight, who wanted to appease Hitler. That was pretty strong.
But finish the job. All I saw is a guy just sitting there, not popular, drinking too much during the day, on a T-shirt with a king.
Brian, you got to write this book.
It's like,
There's a lot
I think
more
your
to
next
it.
history book is on Winston Churchill, why he wasn't so great.
No, Winston Churchill was great. The movie wasn't.
Okay.
I
thought the
love the
movie was
guy.
fun.
You didn't like
All right,
it?
let's get
No, but
Dan in here.
let me finish your point.
Okay, sure.
That your point is right. That given what they had to deal with in terms of the hashtag Me Too movement,
That was my first point.
the fact that I'm trying to think, Kobe Bryant,
Right.
who had been accused,
Very controversial.
very controversial, and then
Gary
the
Oldman.
guy that I've been pushing, Gary Oldman, turns out that he had some wife say that he was hitting her in the head with a phone or something.
Yeah.
And this all comes rushing back, so it's almost like guess what? They're living in a glass house.
Yeah.
They are. Dana, you don't live in a glass house.
No.
No, you don't. But one day, perhaps. What about the fact that it was the lowest rated Oscars in the history of the world?
I think there's been a bit of a trend of that, but that's also been true with other big award shows and also big sporting events, except for like when you have a championship. But I think it's mostly because there's so many other choices.
Right.
So last night, for example, we decided to watch the Edward R. Israel Esquire movie, the one with Denzel Washington, instead of watching the Oscars. But during the movie, Peter kept telling me who was winning for best hair and everything because he got it on his phone. And so I think that there's so many ways that you can get information now. But the other thing is, one of the reasons that we hadn't seen all the movies until the last couple of weeks is because we don't typically go to the theater anymore.
Yeah.
You wait till you can watch it at home. And then you know how much it cost us last night? Something like $4.99 to rent that movie.
Yeah.
We watched it and we're in the comfort of our own home. And so I just think that the technology is changing the way we can have access to it. It's like going to the old dollar theater. If you
Right.
had those in your
oh,
world.
those were dirty.
No, they weren't dirty.
No, I mean the insides were
Oh,
dirty.
yeah.
Right. They didn't clean. I used to work in the movies. It got very dirty. That's why they keep the lights off.
Did you really?
Plus, you want to see the movie.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind, I think 50% of the people did not watch because they thought almost giving in to the other side. I'm telling you, when Jimmy Kimmel hosted this, when Hollywood does what they did, 50% of the country said, if I tune in, I am giving up on President Trump or President Bush or Republicans, and I will not give those Democrats ratings. I'm telling you.
You know what I find interesting? The goodie bag, Kimberly, had over $100,000 in trips and electronics and doodads, and it proves that point. The more that you get in life, the more you get in life. Like, these people do not need free things.
Yeah, billionaires don't pay for anything.
Yeah.
Right, but then, everybody likes a little swag bag, and believe me, they're first to grab them, okay?
Yeah, they are. They run. They'll trample over a poor family to get that trip.
And people try to take two and then go through the line and give it to their driver and go back through again. That was the other Meryl Streep. Give me this one. It's bad.
No, that was Glenn Close.
But one thing, can I just, because you don't want to be too negative on the Oscars, I'll give you something else positive.
Yes.
I like the whole thing with the jet ski.
Brilliant. The jet ski was brilliant. The idea, if you get the shortest speech, you win a jet ski and a trip to Lake Havasu.
Yeah, some costume director got it for 30
That was hilarious.
But who wants to go to Lake Havasu?
Oh.
Kidding. I know my sister goes to Lake Havasu.
Wow. I guess we know where your bread is buttered.
I know Lake Havasu.
I don't even know what that means.
And by the way, you know what you guys haven't mentioned?
What?
I thought, and this picks up on what you were talking about, the entertainment factor, that people want to be entertained.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, the best movies are not
true.
blockbuster hits, is what I'm trying to say. And none of these are. They're good movies, but they're not. But the ones that are blockbuster hits,
Don't get.
right now, the ones, guess what? You have women like Wonder Woman, right? A woman, and then you had a superhero, Black Panther, and even Get Out, a horror film with a black lead actor. I think there's something different given #MeToo going on in Hollywood. So maybe they are changing, Greg.
I will say that I thought that my favorite moment of the Oscars was Eva Marie Saint. She's 93. She's older than the Oscars. She's more articulate and cogent than anybody out there. And I think what's missing is, like, I like to watch, when I was a kid, I liked to watch the Oscars to see Charlton Heston and Jimmy Stewart. They come out and they're not their characters, they're themselves. But in this case, when you see movie stars now, they conform to a certain character about saying the right things, the right moral posture, whereas that didn't exist in the 70s. They were just out there getting drunk.
But you know what? That's I can't follow you.
All right, that's all right. I know.
But I was going to follow you, but I can't pretend to. But I will say this:
You're not going to act for the Academy Awards?
Why can't the biggest box office smash hit be lauded? Why can't they get awards?
You mean Trump the movie?
Yeah.
Trump is a bigger movie than all of it.
Like Black Panther's not going to get any awards. I guess it's eligible for next year, right? It's not going to get any awards. What are they in
doubt, though. I
sports?
disagree.
bet it
MVP,
does.
I bet you it doesn't.
I'll bet
because
you-
it would have released it at a different time.
It'll get Best Picture nod, no question.
Oh, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Well, it could be. It's a good
never
movie,
do.
but I don't think that
It's the
happens.
right movie.
X-Men how many awards did X-Men win?
I don't know.
Nothing.
No.
Because
None.
the most successful
That's a trick
movies don't get
question.
awarded, as if they're saying, I know what you like, but I know better.
My favorite Oscar story, we have the picture of Emma Watson, a lovely actress. I hope that this is actually a temporary tattoo. It probably is, but it says Time's Up, and salute to the event, the movement, but there's no apostrophe. And I think she should sue.
Well, you could go back for
Oh, it's easy to put that in.
Really?
Get at
Yeah.
it.
I guess, I wonder if it's, but I think it's a temporary tattoo.
Henna?
Yeah.
A misspelled temporary tattoo. How lame.
Oh, wow. A damning
That's
assessment by Dana Perino.
So
She's an expert on
dissatisfying.
temporary henna tattoos, by the way.
You know, if you're going to get a tattoo, make it temporary.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
What about the people disinvited? Casey Affleck can't go. James
know.
Franco can't go. Very good
Do you
actor.
not have times when you have to rap on Fox and Friends?
Yeah.
Not
No
at
one's talking
all.
Usually people are screaming at
They
me
don't-
right now.
you're
I
not
don't get
paying-
that.
They don't pay attention, and they figure we got so many
We got to go,
hours
Sheriff
left.
Clark. All right.
Gorka's up next.
Gorka's up next. No. New calls for a second special counsel. That's next.
Your skin needs to be kissed on. My eyes, baby, fixed on.
The DOJ has come under some scrutiny for how it obtained a FISA court warrant on a former member of the Trump campaign. Support is now growing among Republicans in Congress for a second special counsel.
I expect the Inspector General to issue a fact-centric, fair report. I don't think the Inspector General himself can answer all of our questions. Some of these witnesses have already left the department, which means the Inspector General does not have jurisdiction. And there are other agencies like the State Department where Michael Horowitz at DOJ has no jurisdiction whatsoever. So I think we're trending perhaps towards another special counsel because of this unique fact pattern and the fact that there are witnesses outside the reach of the Inspector General.
So, Kimberly, for a long time, Republicans have been saying they believe that Michael Horowitz, that the Inspector General, could handle all of this. And there are mechanisms by which the Inspector General, if he needed to, get a previous DOJ employee to talk to him that if they're not willing to, that he could use a U.S. attorney to go. But I think what the Republicans are trying to do here is to try to stop the partisanship of this investigation and try to see if they should go to a second special counsel. The question for you is, should they be careful what they wish for on that?
Well, certainly, right? I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword. When you think about it, you say, okay, well, intrinsically it sounds like a good idea, and you are seeing more of a measure of support from Republicans to do that. And you saw a lot of that across the airwaves today. Former Tea Party guy Jordan saying it as well, that perhaps it would be warranted, and this is an important situation. But yes, it is a shift in the Republican paradigm to even say, let's go to a special counsel on it. But when you think about the amount of work and it's things that they have to do to get through it and try to do something expeditiously in the interest of efficiency as well and getting away from partisan politics, it sounds like a good idea, but it could also lead down to a whole other road and take forever and give more time to go through things. One of the criticisms of Mueller is, okay, how about focusing on what you originally were looking at in the original charges, the original focus and scope of the investigation, but then it tends to always broaden out tentacles.
Right. And then, Juan, I guess another problem could be that it depends on who you get as a special counsel, because then if it's not if that person is not to President Trump's liking or to the Democrats' liking, then maybe there still won't be any trust at the end of this. Plus, there's two things. As I understand it, this would be for supposed or possible FISA abuse. But I think that a lot of people in the Trump world think that this would be for everything, including Hillary Clinton's emails.
Well, exactly. And in fact, a lot of this really stems from one so-called Republican, Donald Trump, because he's the one that's been going after the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, and saying, hey, that's an Obama guy. Why aren't you, Mr. Magoo, speaking to his Attorney General in the most disrespectful way possible? Why aren't you getting Justice Department lawyers to work on this case instead of the Inspector General? And now and then he says, go after Hillary Clinton. But that's not what this is about. It's supposed to be about questions regarding FISA. And again, his own Justice Department, his own FBI says, this is reckless, this is dangerous, don't do it.
Well, Brian, one possible thing is that the Inspector General of the Justice Department is having to investigate the Justice Department. And having worked there, I know that can be done, but the possibility of having a second special counsel would then perhaps give this a veneer of credibility that the investigation right now doesn't have because of what's happened to the politicization of the Intel Committee.
A couple of things. The casual way in which Juan Williams said Mr. Magoo in the conversation just goes to show you what these nicknames...
He didn't say it casually first. He wasn't the first one.
I know, but just the way he said Mr. Magoo, of course, we know Jeff Sessions. I am as curious as anybody what Loretta Lynch did behind the closed doors. I am very curious what happened with James Comey. I am very curious what's going on with this FISA court. I do not, as much as frustrated as everybody is, mostly Republicans are, but some Democrats, I don't want another special counsel. The country cannot go through this again. It makes everything fundamentally worse. It makes people go into their corners. We never get anything done. I echo what Condoleezza Rice said at the end of The View, when she looked over at Adam Schiff and she said, I understand you have an important job, but wrap it up. The country needs to get over this. If we go do this again and we start living 2015 and 2016, it'll be bad for the country, and it will not help the Republicans either.
Well, I mean, it could help the Republicans, I guess, or maybe it would just be good to get justice.
I disagree with everything that Brian Kilmeade said.
What is going on?
I believe that a second special counsel is not enough. We need a third special counsel, and then we need a fourth. Yes, and then we need a fourth special counsel. It should never end. It should be special counsel Rochambeau, like I've said before. People are already in their corners. This is all team sports stuff. There's an ongoing mission going on right now, and it's not to beat Trump, it's to stop Trump, because I think that the media and the Democrats have realized that they actually have to admit that President Trump's doing a much better job as president than they can admit or can actually fight, and that it actually may end up has a lot more in common with the American public's perceptions than them. So what they have to do is stop him, not beat him. This is what they're doing.
But the second special counsel would be supposedly to help President Trump.
Yeah, that's what you know what? I've tuned out. Okay. I'm like I said, the special counsel's
They're not. He's not better than they thought. He just doesn't go down with a punch. They thought they'd hit him a couple of times and he'd go down.
Yeah.
Instead, it turns out he doesn't mind it.
Yeah.
That's why they say the chaos.
Yeah.
He doesn't mind the chaos.
No, he doesn't.
And you know what? We're going to talk about that because ahead, turmoil in the White House, the president's former chief of staff says, "Don't be distracted by the talk." Next.
You think I'm talking crazy in a different language?
Yes.
Chaos, turmoil, madness. No, not the 5. But all kinds of words are being thrown around to describe the Trump White House. Someone who once had a front seat to it all says, ignore the talk. The president's process may be different, but it's getting great results. Here's Reince Priebus.
You can't look at the distractions. I think what the staff has to do is focus in on the results. And so I think what the president does, and he writes about it even in his own books, is he puts rivals around him intellectually. You have people like Wilbur Ross, who's going to be on your show, and Gary Cohn. And he puts those two guys in front of him and says, okay, fight out tariffs in front of me. And they fight it out. The media covers the fight, but ultimately the decision is made. Look at the economy. Look at ISIS. Look at the courts. The decisions and the things that President Trump has done have put him on a great course. That process, while different, has gotten to good results, and that's what I think people need to do.
Okay, so it's very curious to see Reince Priebus out kind of doing these talking points on the Sunday show. So he's trying to direct the attention away from chaos, away from General Kelly or staff changes, Cohen, McMaster, is there turmoil there, to say, okay, well, the process, and make it about the president, Dana.
Well, so Reince hadn't really done a lot of press from about
so why is he doing
August till recently. I assume that maybe he got the time off that he needed and that the White House is looking for allies and support, and asked him if he would consider going out there and talking about things from his perspective, because he was there. He has credibility from that point. I would say that from the chaos standpoint, it's never as bad as it looks from the outside, because 98% of people who work in a White House have very specific jobs that they have to do. The government is clearly running well and on time, so that isn't a concern. Maybe it's 95% at this White House, because there's no doubt that we talk about the personnel issues at this White House all the time, and a lot of that is self-imposed. But the crowdsourcing of the policy debate, it is different. Like, we're having the debate about tariffs this week out in the open, and we're all participating. I had people on my show today participating, and everyone's sending in inputs. So it's a different way to do policy time, and it just ends up being what it is. I would say also, though, that when the president was able to work more cooperatively with Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell in the Congress, and that started around August, September, it's when a lot of these things started really coming together for getting a lot of accomplishments done. Things turned the corner, so that now when you have a week where it looks like there's chaos, at least they can point back and say, well, there might be chaos, but at least you should like the results. Don't you like the economy? And so Reince has something to go out and talk about.
Yeah, so it is. It's just curious to see him kind of back out again, but it's highlighting the point that maybe things weren't going so well when he was there. Is it going better when Kelly's here? It seems like he's helping to try to push some of the press away from General Kelly, chaos, Cohen, McMaster, all of that, which I think is very specific. That this isn't happening, by accident. But as to the morale piece too, is good advice for the internal staff not to get distracted. But if morale is super low, you do run the risk of losing good people.
You do, and a couple of things. I'm not sure I believe a lot of it. Some of it's flat out contradictory. According to 4 sources inside the White House, John Kelly has been used as a confidant by the president to get rid of Jared and his daughter. Really? I'm having the Marine 4-star general run interference to tell Ivanka, I need you to go home and work on shoes and dresses.
Do you really believe that?
No, I don't, but that's what's part of the headlines and part of the narrative. Some of the stuff is contradictory and does not make sense.
Okay.
So I don't buy that it's as chaotic as is. Also, you have a guy in there who doesn't mind having unrest, where you and I perhaps might have stomach-churning moments. He's fine with it. Did you see him Friday when he was talking about tariffs? He didn't have a care in the world. You hear about him Saturday at the Gridiron? He had a great time. And the fundraiser Friday night, the guy is not getting worked up.
Well, meeting President Trump.
Yes.
Yes. Well, he seems to be able to, thrive or survive well in chaos or stability, right? I mean, that's kind of his nature. He's used to it. Juan, what do you think?
Well, I just don't understand. It seems to me total chaos. I mean, and I would just say, look at the guns debate last week, where 1 minute it looks like, oh, he's taking on the NRA. Then the NRA comes back and says, no, he agrees with us. No resolution. How about the trade debate? Oh, 1 minute it says, yeah, we're going to impose tariffs And guess what? The stock market goes bananas. Then he says, I'm not so sure, but then yes, we're going to use it as a leverage point in terms of what's going on with Canada, our friend, and Mexico, our friend, in terms of the NAFTA debate. It's like, well, wait a second. White Houses, Dana could speak to this, typically are hierarchical and stick to message so that the message is clear to the public for political advantage. Here, there's no, it's like you're a Republican, like what side are the Republicans on? Today, Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, says, I'm not with Trump on trade. How is that helpful? What is the strategy? What's the strategy behind attacking your own Attorney General as Mr. Magoo, Brian?
Okay, well, who should be managing that, Greg?
I'm busy.
Captain Chaos?
Look, number one, we know why there's chaos. It's because we can see it. And I've said this before. This is the most transparent entity since Brian Stelter's hair. You can see everything going on inside of the White House, so that makes it look like there's more chaos. What I find interesting is how the media views Donald Trump as this incredibly divisive character when he has the most amorphous politics you could ever imagine. He is all over the place on immigration, guns, and trade. Guns, as you point out, trade, as you point out, and even with immigration, he's going to let 1.7 million people in. It's because he's a populist and a non-ideologue, which confuses people like us who play team sport politics, who believe that there's a right and a left and set ideologies. He has more in common, and this may be bad, but it may be good. But he may have more in common with the average apolitical citizen who, when they hear an idea, they like that idea, but they also like that idea, and both ideas might contradict each other. But he listens to both of them. To him and to the average apolitical citizen, politics is a buffet. And you walk into that buffet and you can like this over here and you can like this over here. You don't see them as two separate teams. You say, like, I want the guns out of the hands of the crazy people. I want my guns. So Trump goes, you're both right. Because that is populism. So it's what's popular, and it changes because.
But it strikes me as like almost an autocrat.
Yep, gotta go.
No.
Like this, an autocrat. Ahead, President Trump breaking bread with the press this weekend, and he actually had a great time. Like Brian said, gridiron dinner highlights when the
President Trump put his feud with the media on ice this weekend, and guess what? He said he's never had so much fun. Can you believe it? Mr. Trump was actually deprecating. There we go. At the annual gridiron dinner in a room full of journalists. Too bad it wasn't televised, but we've got you some quotes. He joked about the turnover at the White House, the impeachment calls, and more. He began with a clever apology for being a little late because his son-in-law, Jared, and here I'm just about quoting, could not get through security. Jared was there along with the first daughter, Ivanka. He also poked fun at his embattled Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, saying, quote, here with us tonight, I offered him a ride over, and he recused himself. The president even surprisingly had nice words for the press, and this is an accurate quote, folks. Quote, I do have a lot of respect for a lot of people in this room. I want to thank the press for all you do to support and sustain our democracy. I mean that. So, Dana, he hasn't accepted the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This is the first time that he's done business with the press on a social level.
I heard he's going. He's doing it.
Oh, I hadn't heard it
I
yet.
have no idea. I haven't been since 2008, and I don't plan to go again to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but I love the Gridiron Dinner. I think it's the best one, and one of the reasons it's the best is because it is not on camera. It is not televised. It has been going on for 160 years or something like that. It's a long-held club. It's one of the best nights in D.C. I love the satire of it, and I think that we all benefit from a night where the press and the president can hobnob behind the scenes, say whatever they want. Their motto is, the gridiron singes, but it never burns. And I'm a big fan of that night, but I don't care if he goes to the Correspondents' Dinner. Sorry, guys, I just don't, but I'm sorry.
Kimberly?
I like it. I like the gridiron. I thought this was good. It showed the president's in good humor. I think it was a nice juxtaposition to a lot of the press out there, chaos and this and that, what's going on, here domestically, also, internationally. So to see him in kind of good humor, making that kind of like inroads with the media, I thought that was good.
Yes.
It just shows his flexibility and his versatility, and he's very good at these events. And I don't know, I'm hearing that he's going to do the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I mean, I'd like to go.
Oh, well, I'm sure that you'll be invited.
Brian likes to go.
Brian likes to go?
It's going to be
These
great.
two bail out on it.
And the correspondence dinner is great because it's televised, and it'll give an opportunity for the whole country to see him with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
He should be the most natural in these situations because remember, he gave up an hour to Comedy Central to roast him for charity, and they are so brutal. You have to really hunt to get the humor. Believe me, it wasn't just hair jokes. But here's the thing with Donald Trump. He actually proves that he'd have the easiest time doing it because none of his fights are personal. That's why he could be friends with Rand Paul and Little Marco and Lindsey Graham, because it's not personal. When he goes at the press, he's upset at what they're doing, but he understands it's sparring. So when his last line is, "I respect what you do," it's ironic because that's actually the first nice thing he said about him, which figured into a comedy monologue. I'm fascinated by where this whole relationship is heading because they know it's great for them, for Donald Trump to be in the Oval Office, because they got 9 storylines a day.
So, Greg, but it's the swamp, isn't it, when you're with like 65 high-profile, prominent journalists in a closed setting in tuxedos? I thought he was the non-swamp guy.
Well, you know, you got to show up at some of these things, right? I mean, that's what people do. The comment that we're not talking about that got him into so much trouble among the Chicken Littles over at CNN and MSNBC was when he said he liked how the Chinese president was cementing his power, correct?
Yeah.
That was the big story. So I always figure you can gauge on how far somebody has evolved on assessing Trump's words. If you're still experiencing rage over these sentences, you're basically like in first grade. Like the rest of America is now in 8th grade or a freshman in high school. When he says something like that, we get it.
Yeah.
We know it's fun. But if you are still like, oh my God, he wants to be a dictator. If he wanted to be a dictator, he would have said that. He would have just like waited and bided his time, like I plan on doing.
But he did say that Oprah is waiting to hear from the Almighty.
That was a hilarious
And
joke.
then he said, "Go ahead."